I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio in the 1990s. It was a wild time in Cincinnati. It was middle America, Ohio, but Cincinnati had very strong German and Catholic roots. People from Cincinnati identified first with what Catholic parish they went to, and often what Catholic school they attended. It was a town where there was an east side and a west side, and the people rarely went to the other side. Many of them had grown up there, as had their parents and their grandparents. There were a few pockets of progressiveness, shout out to the 3 Unitarian Universalist congregations in Cincinnati, but tradition rang strong. In 1990, the Cincinnati Contemporary Arts Center showed an exhibit of Robert Mapplethorpe photographs. How many of you know Robert Mapplethorpe? Robert Mapplethorpe was an American photographer, best known for his black and white photographs. His work featured an array of subjects, including celebrity portraits, male and female nudes, self-portraits, and still life images. The exhibit included nude photographs, including some photographs of men in sadomasochistic poses. While the exhibit created a stir in other cities where it had been exhibited, Cincinnati took it to another level. The Contemporary Art Center and its then director, Dennis Berry, were arrested and charged with pandering obscenity. After much stir and an incidental exponential interest in the photos and increased value of all Robert Mapplethorpe photographs, a jury returned a not guilty verdict. This case, among others, led to a great debate on whether tax dollars should support the arts, and if so, who decides what is offensive or obscene? And if art can be considered a form of free speech, is it a violation of the First Amendment to censor art? It is, to this day, an issue that comes up often. I was still a young adult, and Cincinnati being on the map for this issue was really intriguing for me. I was, and still am, someone who loves to talk about deeper issues, and it brought up a lot of nuances and perspectives for me. Frankly, it made art more interesting for me. This controversy comes up in my mind often. Karen Finley, who is an American performance artist, musician, poet, and educator, was also attacked by notables such as Jesse Helms for decency issues around the same time. She had strong words about art that pushed boundaries. She said, "Art as transgression or any transgressive act becomes a Rorschach test for the culture it comes out of. In one sense, transgressive art is a kind of psychic problem solving at the cultural level. It looks head-on at unresolved hostilities, humiliations, and traumas. It offers catharsis, and you could say that it's only in the aftermath of catharsis that healing is possible. But the culture is not ready to face those hostilities, humiliations, traumas. Then it responds with tremendous anxiety. Anxiety which is often expressed as hostility towards the artist." So that is about Karen Finley and about Robert Mapplethorpe. But some of those words I bring into this context as well. These statues were created following the killing of 4 girls in a church bombing in 1963, and the art was by the artist John Waddell. Waddell was compelled to make the statues after the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church by members of the Ku Klux Klan on September 15th, 1963. Yes, the anniversary was just a little bit ago. 4 girls were killed in the bombing: Addie Mae Collins, who was 14, Cynthia Wesley was 14, Carol Robertson was 14, and Carol Denise McNair was 11. In what could arguably be considered his most famous piece of art, the art is entitled That Which Might Have Been, Birmingham, 1963. Waddell describes the piece this way: the total group stands as a prayer of atonement and symbolizes the unfulfilled maturity of the 4 Black girls killed in the church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama on September 15, 1963. The total group implies nobility, perseverance, and hope. The negative space in the center of the 4 figures implies the base of a vortex reaching heavenward and suggests the need and desire for supernatural aid. On the raised hand of the figure facing northward is written the word prayer. The overtone of the total group is earnest hope for understanding among humankind. At the dedication of the art at UUCP, Waddell said the following: from a world torn asunder by artificial and meaningless barriers where differences create misunderstanding and fear, we look to a future of harmony and peace, where differences quicken interest, reveal beauty, and create a desire to understand. To the achievement of such a world, we dedicate this art, keeping in memory the lives of those innocents memorialized herein. Now, you need to know that there has been controversy around these statues basically since the inception. This is not new in 2025. Some of that controversy remains, and some of it is new with our evolving understanding of race, sexualization of Black bodies, and the impact and basically our consciousness thinking about the role of statues and what they mean in our public spaces. A little bit of a history of some of that context is Waddell made 2 casts of this piece of art. Around 1992, just before the 30th year anniversary of the bombing, Reverend Christopher M. Hamlin from the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham led a campaign to bring the sculptures to Birmingham. Hamlin traveled to Arizona to see the work and meet the artist. John and Ruth Waddell used personal funds to recast the work, and the Waddells traveled to Birmingham to talk to the families. And in the end, one of the families did not like the girls being nude, and therefore the second casting never made it to Birmingham. It is currently at the George Washington Carver Museum and Cultural Center here in downtown Phoenix. According to one of the newspaper articles about the statues, the UUA, our denomination in Boston, their anti-racism task force, sent a letter decrying the statues and stated that they should be removed. The letter stated, "The statue is weighted with both historic and contemporary symbols of oppression," it reads. "Among these is the historic availability of Black women as sexual objects to white men, the definition of the future of these girls as one being merely sexual objects, and the visual similarity to the statues to depictions of slave auction blocks." Waddell's daughter, Amy, who I actually spoke to last week about this, is quoted in one of the articles saying, "Amy said her father listened closely to the criticism and never took it personally. She says, he knew the history of America and he understood where that was coming from," she said. "His intent was to really honor those families and those girls and to put a stamp on that moment and say never again." So there's some context. It's important that we not look at those statues just as they are now and act like they just showed up last week and we don't know the intent, the thought, and the history behind them. Context matters. And context is not all that matters. There are several things that are true. And remember how important, I say it all the time, that we recognize that several things can be true at the same time. John Henry Waddell was a white man. He used white models to pose for the statues. The statues were supposed to be symbolic of the future that the little girls represented, not the girls themselves. That was his intent, no matter what the impact is, and we know that there is a difference between intent and impact. John was a fierce champion for racial justice and progressive values. He was a close friend with Eugene Grigsby, a black artist who was a very, very influential member of this congregation, who was a big champion of having these statues here on our campus. As you saw in the photos, the statues used to stand in water, and water is difficult to keep flowing in the desert. They are now surrounded by rocks after several attempts to keep water pumps functioning in the dry and the heat, and they failed. Waddell did the majority of his statues in the nude, as have artists throughout time. This includes his nude dancers that are in front of the Herberger Theater downtown. He's quoted saying, "The taboo against the human form in our society is very great, and yet at base, almost everyone will agree that the human form is beautiful. Besides, clothing dates a piece almost immediately." Black bodies, especially female black bodies, have been over-sexualized for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We have evolved in our thinking about race, acknowledging that our own social location changes how we experience and perceive race. There has been much more focus on statues in the last few decades, recognizing what has been commemorated, why, and what the legacy of some of those statues are, including listening to the voices who are most harmed by the impact of statues. Some black members of this congregation love these statues. Some black members of this congregation don't like them. Some white members of this congregation love these statues. Some white members don't like them. Those are all truths, all at the same time. So let me name another truth. Reverend Yadini, who is a dear friend of mine, preached the week before I came back. And recency bias being what it is, a lot of you wanted to speak to me about it immediately. Some of you said, many, I would say like a dozen, what are we going to do about the statues? That was the most popular question I had. Some of you said, I agree with Reverend Yadini. Some of you said, we're not getting rid of the statues, are we? All of these are reasonable questions. But I want to note, and I spent a lot of time reflecting on what all of those questions had in common. They all implied two things. First of all, asking me what we were going to do. And they all implied a rush to a decision. What are we going to do about the issues of the statues? I found this really interesting, and I thought about it a lot. What did it mean that everyone was asking, what are we going to do? After them existing for 61 years and being on this campus for all of that time, how are we going to make a decision quickly and have this over with? Even the assumption that we had to do something, much less that we had to do it right away, is an assumption. Personally, I think that this is a sign of white supremacy culture that I have had to counter in myself. The rush to do something rather than exist in the discomfort that not doing something often requires. I often find that we want to move right to action without going through the steps of discernment because, let's admit it, living in all of the questions, exploring all of the nuances, having differences of opinion, and possibly real conflict where someone could get mad at me, and having all that time where we don't know the ending and the outcome and the decision can be downright uncomfortable, anxiety-provoking, complicated. And here's another truth. This congregation can do whatever it wants. These statues were put on our property 9 ministers ago. 9. There will be ministers that come after me. And as much as you might want me to be, I am not queen of this congregation. There is not a single scenario in which I will stand here from this pulpit that all of those 9 other ministers have preached from and state, hear ye, this is my official proclamation of what we shall do about the statues. You're laughing because it's true, right? That is not my role. That role belongs to you, to the members of this congregation, if you choose to take it on. My role is to help us think of the most thoughtful, moral, inclusive, love-oriented ways to help us think about difficult situations. And I have to tell you, I've thought about this one a lot. I thought about it for many years and was thinking, oh, we should preach about this sometime, and then a pandemic and white supremacists and a lot of chaos. And we're still in a lot of chaos, and yet here we are. Instead of telling you what to do, I'd like to propose a challenge to you, this UUCP congregation. This is one that our ministerial intern, Isaac Castro, and I are willing to help you with, to hold the container for. My challenge to you is the following. I challenge you to put aside the white supremacy culture of urgency thinking and live in some of this discomfort. I challenge you to not make a decision about the statues for at least 1 year. This is a way to make sure that we have some boundaries around it, that we don't go, oh, wait, this is more uncomfortable than I thought. Can we just please make a decision? I challenge you that in this year you participate in a series of discussions about the many different aspects of this topic and really engage in this discussion. We have the opportunity to not just talk about the statues, but about all of the issues that are related to them. Let's learn more of the history of the 1963 Birmingham bombing. Let's learn more about what each of the figures represents and how the artists crafted them. We have all of that in John Waddell's own words. Let's talk about the role of art in social activism, what role it plays, what role it doesn't. Let's talk about our own individual identities around race and gender and class and how that changes our perspectives, and that people with the same identities can have different opinions. Let's talk about the history of how Black bodies have been depicted and the impact of that on our society. Let's talk about the responsibility of white artists depicting Black bodies. Let's talk about exploring how you feel, what you think, how this art moves you in one way or another, or doesn't, and digging into why that might be. I challenge each and every one of you, whether this is your first time here today or you have been here since the statues went up. Is there anyone? There's people here who have been close to that, but a lot of us are new since then. But I challenge you to go out into the memorial garden and sit with the art. Explore both what your mind is saying to you, but also what your heart is saying. Be open that it may be saying multiple things to you, or that you don't know if it's saying anything at all. I challenge you that even after a year, you don't have to make a decision, or you can make a decision. It's your choice. And you have options beyond, do we keep them or not? You could decide at the very least there needs to be a placard that explains some of the context. All we have right now is the name of the art and the name of the artist. That's all Reverend Yadney had to go on. Maybe we should describe the context, the meeting. Maybe we should even write how we spent some time discerning about it and what we came to around it. That will be your choice in a year. The other reason I am challenging you to have these conversations, and one of the reasons I think that now is the ideal time to do this, is that having courageous conversations is a skill that we are sadly losing in our culture. If anything, the last 2 weeks has amplified this, and it is amplifying rapidly, my beloveds, rapidly. How many of you have people you used to be able to have rich conversations with and now can't converse with at all? Yeah. How does that feel? What are some words of how that feels? Awful.
It hurts.
It hurts, painful, sad. Yeah. What's that? Ugly. Lonely. Ridiculous. Sad. The opposite of love. Frightening. Yeah. Unchallenged. Woo. Yeah. These are not words we want in our congregation, are they? No. We are seeing that if people have a disagreement, they cut each other out of their lives. They denigrate them. They find people to gang up on them. We triangulate to talk about them with somebody else. And worse, as we have seen in the last 2 weeks, where someone disagreed with a political figure or ICE agents, and I'm sad to say there was a shooting at a Mormon church this morning. They show up and they kill them. What kind of society is this? It has become not only difficult to have conversations where we disagree, it has become dangerous. Here at UUCP, I believe that one of the main reasons we are here together is to practice being the type of people and the type of community we want to see in the wider world. So, my beloveds, I am urging you to practice being these people. If you can't do it with the other people in your life, we can do it with each other. We can do it. Can we practice all the things that can come out of this exercise, including having multiple perspectives on an issue, still respecting and caring for a person even if they have differing views on this issue, being open to being convinced one way or another, or being open to trying to convince someone else without denigrating them, casting them as evil, racist, immature, or uninformed. Can we practice learning about how another person thinks and honoring the dignity and worthiness that that person still has and that their beliefs are still valid? Here's the thing. Right now, many of the conversations in our society are so very difficult because what we are arguing about is literally the ability for some people to exist. Those are hard conversations. If you are asking someone not only whether trans people really exist, yes, they do, whether they are able to exist in the way that feels whole to them, yes, they should. If people are illegal, no, they are humans. Whether people are allowed to love who they want, yes, they can. These conversations are almost impossible when we can't even agree on the definition of someone's humanity. That is what is splitting us apart. But we can talk about art. I know we can. I know that this community is thoughtful, can handle nuance, can hold people's rights to having different opinions, can still love each other in our differences. And I think practicing this is not just an exercise of the statues in our backyard, but it is a critical skill for how we make it through these hellscape years. I actually think that the artist John Waddell, who died in 2020, right before the pandemic, would get a kick out of this. He knew that there was controversy around the statues. He embraced controversy. I have heard amazing stories about him, but I want to think that he would appreciate it that we are using his art 61 years later as a tool for discussion, reflection, and learning how to be a better humans when he was making art for a time when we were having problems being better humans. After all, is that not the goal of art? So as a reminder, I don't have a horse in this race. I have opinions. But so do you. So do you. And that's all they are, is my individual opinions. My priority is to create an environment where we can courageously talk to each other, where we can learn, where we can practice. This is an invitation to you. So what do you think? Do you want to take me up on my invitation? Okay. Do you want to think about the nuances and recognize the different opinions? Do you want to practice this so that we can be better at having courageous conversations in the difficult times that we still have ahead of us? Yes. And can we commit to having these conversations with the values that we cherish, respect, love at the center, worthiness, care, dignity? Yes. Awesome. Let's get on with it then. Let's go be the world that we want to live in. Amen.